So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another replay battle, this one on the map River TELEP, I believe it is called. I may have some pronunciation errors there, but it is a new map which is issued as standard as part of the new patch, and it's designed certainly with sort of team battles and free-for-alls in mind. Certainly not a map that you want to do a 1v1 on to get the most out of, and as you can see, it is kind of a river crossing, but in a different way, because the crossings are sort of high cliffs, so it's more of a gorge than a river than anything else. There are some forested areas, some small forested areas on either side of the map, but the centre is going to be a little bit more choke pointy, whereas the sides are going to be more traditionally pitch battle. So there's something for every faction potentially to take advantage of here, whether it be ambushes or just a straight rush, or a more choke pointy engagement, of course. And if you don't want to sort of look at the army compositions, then there will be a timestamp as always in the description below. We'll start off with the blue team though, and starting off on the far right hand side of the mini-map over here, we have Mech DI playing as Mordor, and at the front here he's got a couple of units, I believe, of the Moranon archers, previously called the Uruk archers, of course. In fact, their bows are floating next to them, which is rather interesting. I think they're in the process of actually getting them out, because they might be in range of their opponents across the way there. Of course, Orc archers, their entire sort of shtick is going to be that they are good, well, their volume is going to be high. You know, they're not particularly skillful or accurate compared to their peers, but the amount of arrows they get downrange is going to be the primary reason to bring them, which means they can skirmish with anyone, even the elves, if you bring them in enough numbers, but of course you will pay for that in other ways. So it's going to be interesting to see whether these Moranon archers will pay for themselves depending on the opponent that DI is facing off against. It's got some fodder, and you may as well bring some fodder, because the first one is free, I know, and I think the second one only cost 100, although that may have changed since the sort of closing stages of the patch releasing, but either way, they're either free or extremely cheap, so you may as well bring them. And I think as spears they do have a bonus against cavalry, but their base damage is so low that cavalry is still going to be able to mow them down like grass. Having a look back here, it is genuine infantry. Over on the side here we have a unit of Sauron's Will, two-handed mace infantry, so they have got some hefty armor piercing, but obviously they are quite vulnerable. I mean, the Sauron's Will compared to units of a similar type have always been a little bit more squishy, so it'll be interesting to see how they hold up in a fight in this situation. He's got some Moranon heavy maulers for even more armor piercing, mixed in with some Minas Morgul chosen. Good mix of heavily survivable spearmen and some high damage shock troops there. This is still more of the same as we move down the line. He's definitely gone for a wider line, which as Mordor is definitely wise, because you know you're going to be leveraging your numbers in a much more effective way by doing this. He's got some Moranon guard over here, obviously not as good as the Minas Morgul chosen, but they are still spears, so they should still help the Moranon heavy maulers survive a little bit longer by giving them a bit of a base to work from. I think this is all he has in terms of his main line force. He's got some more Minas Morgul chosen over here, so a nice symmetrical line, and at the end over there he has got some more Sauron's Will. I'm sure you've noticed them at this point. We are paused, but as soon as we unpause we will hear the troll drummers bang their drums, inspiring fear in their enemies and courage in their allies. They are quite slow moving, as I'm sure most people will notice when they actually use them. For Mordor, however, they can be invaluable, because of all of the Orc factions, Mordor can inspire the most fear in their enemies, so you're definitely going to be seeing a lot more breaking when you're facing against Mordor than the other Orc factions, but also it will keep your fodder in line much more easily, so definitely a good pick, I feel like. The troll drummers, in an open field situation like this, they can maybe be a little bit slow, but I do still feel as though they are going to be worth it the vast majority of the time. We've also got another arch unit back here, the Mighty Temple Guard, one of the 3 armor-piercing archers in the game as it stands. They're also very, very good in melee. Of the armor-piercing archers, I believe they're the best in melee, so they have that going for them. They're going to be focusing down elite targets across the way, but of course they are a little bit vulnerable to being focused down themselves, because there are few of them in the unit, but they do have good armor values and they do have multiple HP, so if they can withstand, that'll be pretty good. And Mordor, as a general rule, are going to be quite aggressive anyway, putting pressure on the enemy skirmishers. And then back here we have another real feather to Mordor's cap there. Plentiful, elite and varied cavalry line. We have the Mounted Númenórean Shield Guard. I believe they are lancers rather than spear cavalry. I might be wrong about that, but I've heard them called lancers multiple times now, so I think that is the right way to call them. Obviously they're going to be very good off the charge. In a sustained fight they're not as terrible as some other lancers, because they are quite tough, but obviously you don't want to leave them in sustained fighting for too long. That's what your other units are for, in particular the Mounted Temple Inquisitors, who are beasts in a cavalry fight. You know, it's going to take a very, very powerful cavalry unit indeed to take them one-to-one, and even if you could take them one-to-one, the Temple Inquisitors are going to be hanging out with the Melkor's Chosen, of course, the Caragor riders, who themselves are absolute monsters in a cavalry fight. Mordor in a cavalry fight are one of the best factions to bring, simply because they may not have too many cavalry units, but what they do have is so powerful, and if you can back them up with something like the Temple Guard, it's going to be very difficult to deal with them. Moving over to his nearest ally, we have the Elves of Mirkwood, so bear with me as I make a fool of myself trying to say their names. Played by Starling, who sent me the replay, so a big thanks to him. And over here at the front we can see that he's got some Adirith Amon Lank, which are they're essentially the Elder Royal Guard from the last patch. They can pull out axes in melee, but primarily, of course, they are a high-tier archer unit that can hide, which ambushes are going to be a big part of how Mirkwood play, I think. Over here, the unit that Thranduil is in, the Iragwe Inanwaith, which are the Elder Royal Council. There aren't many of them. They are not AP, but of course they are highly skillful, highly elite Elven archers, so you know what to expect from them. Over here we've already seen their name, the Dulpeng Eminduia. My word, I'm sure I've butchered that, I'm so sorry. But again, another archer unit that can hide. I don't believe they're rangers, but when it comes to the elves it's a little bit harder to tell, because of course they don't have ranger written in the name, even if they may look like them. Got a couple of units of here Ipeng, one of the few Mirkwood archer units that can't hide, but the upside to this is of course they are the sturdiest of the Mirkwood archers, and they also have a decent missile damage to boot as well as that nice elven accuracy. We've got some Thurn E Tower, which are one of my favourite units actually for Mirkwood, simply because they are on the cheaper end of the scale and they can hide, so they are going to be very, very useful. I think we've got a couple of units of them here actually in squares. Back here we also have some Thandrim E Erin, which are the spearmen, the basic spearmen of Mirkwood. Decent unit to bring. You're going to be seeing them quite a lot, I feel like, because Mirkwood might struggle with massed cavalry in a 1v1 environment anyway. Got a couple of units of here Eorth, the basic sword and board infantry units. Or previously the fearsome Elder Palace Guard, although now they are called the Arthalion Inanwaith, which of course they are still very powerful, but they aren't quite able to take on an entire army like they used to be able to. And then a couple of units of here Lang back here. They've been changed. The H has been removed again. So yeah, an elite army from Mirkwood, which they can afford to bring in this situation because they are near the choke points. No cavalry, interestingly enough, and no cavalry from their nearest allies either. XMR Tot, who is playing as the Dwarves of khazad-dum. He's got some Sons of the Fallen here at the back, which is actually where Balin is hanging out. They're not multiple HP anymore. I was told that the khazad-dum player has come back after a pretty lengthy absence, so we'll see how well he does. Got a few units of 3rd Legion, decent infantry of course, going to be difficult to break down by the vast majority of other factions. Some sentries of khazad-dum, which I always think are a good pick because they are very good for their price point in terms of khazad-dum cavalry, pikemen. khazad-dum don't have much cavalry at all. The 4th Legion Shield Guard, which are going to be making a lot of appearances as khazad-dum because they're so good in most situations, and they're backed up by the Axe Guard, which makes up for their lack of, well, mostly for their lack of damage. You know, the Shield Guard are actually pretty good in terms of damage, and obviously he's got his Orc Hunters as well to give himself some range contingent. And he's actually got his stakes over here by the forest, so he's going to be expecting his enemy to charge through the forest into his army, which is interesting. No artillery from the khazad-dum player, which is interesting. Moving across to the red team, we have the Realm of Linden, played by Lost MJG, and at the front he has his cavalry. He's got his Wardens of Harlinden, which are the horse archers, not likely to be too useful against the Dwarves of khazad-dum, it must be said. But something which might be, as long as they can get into range, are the Mithlond Lancers because of their javelins. Javelins can, of course, reap a heavy toll on the dwarves. We've got the chariots, interestingly enough, as well, the Mithlond nobles. The chariots, despite the fact that they are relatively, well, comparatively speaking, they are much tankier than they used to be, because where everything else has had their stats reduced, the chariots have stayed mostly the same. They are still very difficult to use, however, because generally speaking, if they stop, they die, despite the fact they have 3 HP. But if you can keep them moving, they can potentially break a lot of infantry, and with the javelins that the Mithlond nobles can also throw, we'll see how they do here, because they could be very useful against the dwarves. 4 Linden pikemen, basic Linden pikes are going to be... It's going to be interesting to see how they can approach the dwarves without being shot by the decent dwarven archers, but we shall see. Mithlond swordmasters in a sustained fight should do very well against the dwarves, actually, with their high skill, and the fact they aren't very well armoured actually helps them against the dwarves. And then back here, I believe, yes indeed, we have the Noldorin Blade Masters. Nothing that the dwarves have brought can go toe-to-toe with the Noldorin Blade Masters, because the Sons of the Fallen are not multiple HP anymore. You would definitely need something along the lines of the Guards of khazad-dum to be able to stand up to the Noldorin Blade Masters. Not the General's Bodyguard, interestingly enough. We'll move along, however, to the the final amount of troops that Linden have. They got some Harlingen infantry. You're always going to be seeing some Harlingen infantry from Linden, I believe. And then up here we have some 4 Linden Marines for some foot javelins, some Harlingen Guard for some foot archers, and then finally, what I can only assume is the General's bodyguard. Well, no, actually, we can't see the bearded elf here. We do have the Noldorin Horse Lords, however. I wonder where the Linden General is. Interesting. I guess I've just missed him. We'll see him in the battle, I'm sure. See how Linden can conquer the dwarves. Then we've got Tydassian playing as Dale. Dale, in this situation, probably one of the few kingdoms of men that could genuinely try and skirmish with the elves of Mirkwood over a long period of time. Although it looks like he's gone for a little bit more in terms of infantry. He's got some Bardingherd and some Lake Town pikemen mixed in. And I think that's going to be a feature to his army. The halberds and the pikes together will be able to compensate for one another's slight weaknesses very nicely. He's got some Lake Town spears as well for that low tier spear infantry. Bardian marksmen, unupgraded in terms of armour. But they are still going to be quite tough to take down. Although Mirkwood might be able to do it. The Dalian marksman is going to be a similar story with them. Another one of the AP archers is going to be on the field as well in the shape of the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. Not going to be terribly useful against Mirkwood, I feel. But against the dwarves, they could potentially be extremely, extremely helpful. And then over here we also have some more Lake Town spears. It's going to be a similar story on this side as well with the pole arms and the archers. And finally, actually, we do have some... Dale are actually going to be sending their cavalry over to help against Mordor, although the Dalian cavalry needs to steer well clear of the Mordor cavalry line. And over here, a very tight formation from another Linden army played by Nephi, and we have some 4 Linden pikemen and some Harlingen infantry here at the front. A nice combination, compensating for one another's weaknesses as well, that combined arms. So we've got some Mithlon Marines here on the flank as well. The javelins might well be very, very useful at dealing with some of the higher tier Mordor stuff, in particular their cavalry, if the cavalry lingers too long in their range. We've got some 4 Linden Marines here in the middle as well. We've also got some Mithlon Swordmasters. It's worth saying that both Linden armies may well have some Wardens of Elos Tyrian somewhere, but of course we won't be able to see them because they can hide. Mithlon Swordmasters should do pretty well against the vast majority of the Mordor infantry. Again, it's going to be primarily the cavalry and the archers they're going to be falling foul of, I think. We've also got some 4 Linden archers back here. So some Linden archers as well to answer the Mordor skirmish line. Then back here, the bearded elf on this side at least is going to be in a unit of Noldorin Guard. Not multiple HP, but they are at least well armoured, which is... I think they're the only Linden unit which can claim to be well armoured. And it is going to be over here where I think things are going to get going first of all, so let's begin. Linden are in a bit of a tight formation, however, which may well play into Mordor's hands a little bit if Mordor decides to advance forward, although DI has gone for a little bit more in terms of his skirmish line, so he might not want to rush forward so recklessly, but I don't think he's going to win the skirmish fight with the 4 Linden archers, so he may be forced to move forward as the Troll Drummers do their thing. He might well try and take down the 4 Linden archers in a skirmish fight over here first of all before committing his troops forward, because of course with all of these heavy maulers, you know, they're going to be the target of the Elven archers as they move forward. But this cavalry is going to be necessary at dealing with the Dalian cavalry if it moves forward. But Linden on this flank, it doesn't look like they've got any cavalry, although there may be some hidden in the trees back there. Cannot tell at this stage as the 4 Linden archers move forward. 4 Linden archers already firing. They'll be firing into the Morannon archers. Morannon archers, the volume of fire is usually the thing they have in their favour. Nephew's getting his 4 Linden archers maybe a little bit close to the fodder. But they actually have more 4 Linden archers than the Morannon archers over here, so Linden should be able to deal with that quite nicely. Oh, hello. The ambush. The ambush is, well, I say ambush, they've actually just charged their cavalry forward. The Mithlon lancers are going into the trees, they need to be careful of the javelins, but over here, the Mithlon nobles, they may be chariots, and I may have said that sort of standing still is death for chariots, but at this point, he's free to sort of just use his javelins on the enemy. Now, he does need to be careful that the archers are now focusing him down. But the Mithlon nobles, previously an infantry unit from the High Elves, of course, now a chariot-javelin hybrid. Getting a few kills, thinning out their infantry lines, just a bit of harassment. Meanwhile, Starling aggressively moving towards this central position, which is an interesting play, but I think looking at the Dalian army, he is more than equipped enough to deal with the Dalian skirmish line, because Dale have gone for a little bit more in terms of their infantry line, and more worryingly for Dale actually, they've gone for more in terms of their pole arms, and without shields, the Bardingherd may have shields, but it's a very low shield value they have. Without decent protection from the Mirkwood skirmishers, the majority of this infantry is just going to get torn to bits. You can see that Starling is quite happy to tear apart these Dalian polearms, and in melee they do need the polearms against Mirkwood, to be honest, because in a straight fight they're not going to have much of a chance. While Starling is going to be able to help out both of his allies, he's going to be sending both units of Thurney Tower over here to help out Mordor, which will help out against the 4 Linden Archers. Speaking of which, where have the 4 Linden Archers actually gone? They have vanished. That is very odd. Where have they? Oh, they've just. The army has moved up, I suppose, or the archers have moved back. The cavalry is also spreading out. It's a bit of a touchy-feely fight at the moment. I don't think anyone's too eager to make the first move for fear of ruining it. There's like a crater over here. That's interesting. Meanwhile, see the Mithlon Lancers are over here, and the Wardens of Harlenden. Wardens of Harlenden could do a decent amount of damage provided they focus down the right units, which in this case is absolutely the pikes. The sentries of khazad-dum are being focused down, which is good to see because they are the most vulnerable target other than the Orc Hunters. Definitely these 2 units, not as well armoured as the vast majority of khazad-dum troops. Interestingly, khazad-dum, maybe a bit of a fighting retreat over here. What is going on over here? This unit of 4th Legion Shield Guard has been absolutely massacred, presumably by the Javelins. Interesting to see. khazad-dum is going to be retreating, which is an interesting gambit. He's going to be moving forward into the centre of the map with his Mirkwood ally. Understandable, but they might be allowing themselves to get surrounded a little bit too easily. As long as DI sort of holds his position in the outer reaches over here, things should be alright. The Athala Rangers revealing themselves. Very nice unit indeed. Doesn't look like many of them died from that Numenorian Shield Guard fight, and now the archers, the Athala Rangers shooting those Shield Guard in the back, and without the shield bonus from the front, things are going to go very poorly for them very quickly against body-piercing Rangers. Still, things are a little bit tense. See Mordor just quite content to sit back. Linden and Mordor not really advancing on one another. I think maybe they're betting on the fact that they're going to win elsewhere. And over here, Lost MJG is doing a good job at forcing khazad-dum onto the retreat, and this fighting retreat from khazad-dum is going quite poorly for them at the moment because they've lost basically an entire unit of archers, and now the javelins from these Mithlon nobles are going to be able to throw their javelins in. Further casualties are going to be inflicted on these pikemen. The Mithlon Lancers, I'm not sure, they should still have ammunition, I would assume. They have pulled out their spears though. Looks like they're going to charge in. They might have used all their ammunition, to be fair, because they did mow down an entire unit of 4th Legion. Dealing with what's left of those archers. Things are going quite well on this flank for the red team. Over here, the 4th Legion, they need to run, to be honest with you. At this point, they can't afford for more of these. The pikes have actually turned around, and that's suicide, because the javelins are going to continue to fire in on them. Mithlon nobles don't have the greatest volume of javies, but the casualties they're going to inflict are going to be... You know, this is a unit that I think Axamar could have saved, but he's not, and again, they're bottling themselves up. But the dwarves and Mirkwood could potentially benefit from a narrower fight. Both of them, the elves, because obviously they don't have the most men to work with, so being stretched too wide, particularly by the likes of Dale, would not be a fight they would want to take, although Linden are now moving forward. Linden of all the elves probably have the most in the way of numbers, as a general rule. Over here we can see that a lot of these Mirkwood units are, well, some of these Mirkwood units are going to be hiding, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Looks like Mordor over there is making some moves, with the Minas Morgul chosen out to the flanks. Here at Eorth, again, the skirmish fight over here has concluded, but again, these polearm units have been just utterly massacred. There's poor Bardingherd and Lake Town pikemen. Oh, you can see over there some more charges coming in. This time on the 4th Legion, but they're so depleted that despite being spears, they are still going to be cut down to size pretty heftily. The unit is actually pretty well separated at the moment. That charge actually, well, they are now wavering, yes. They're going to be sandwiched between 2 cav units, and they are going to rout off. Good work by the Linden player here, bleeding out the dwarf player, well, one of the Linden players I should say, MJG, for bleeding the dwarves out at the wrists here. The death by 1,000 cuts is strong. And actually over here you can see that the Morannon Guard and the Minas Morgul Chosen moving over here to Dale, and I think Nefi's lack of movement over here may well cost his ally a bit, because he doesn't look too eager to make any moves at this point in time. And this is definitely not the sort of army that is going to stand up to Minas Morgul Chosen. The Dalian archers are firing in, but it's not the most cost-effective use of their time going up against a very heavily armoured spear unit like the Minas Morgul Chosen. The Lake Town River Patrol as well. A javelin unit like this is a potential boon in the late game, and they are being cut down by spears. So DI seeing an opportunity and taking it. Nefi is sending over some Mithlon Marines now at the very least. The Mounted Numenorean Shield Guard are coming back for round 2. And Mordor are going to continue to chase Dale here, which is interesting. Mirkwood could well put some pressure on them with their skirmishers as well, which would not be the best situation for Dale to be in. The Dalian cavalry is now moving forward as well. Looks like they're going to get a rear charge onto the Minas Morgul Chosen. Nope, the Minas Morgul Chosen are going to turn around and get a counter charge. But perhaps more worryingly, the Mounted Numenorean Shield Guard are here, and the Mithlon Marines are all on their lonesome, and they're going to get charged. This unit of higher tier javelins is definitely not the sort of thing that they can afford to lose, although having said that, Mirkwood doing more damage to his allies' cavalry than to his enemies' javelins, and now the Mounted Numenorean Shield Guard are horribly surrounded and they're going to be crushed. Having said that, the Melkor's Chosen are now moving forward, so out of the frying pan into the fire for the Mithlon Marines. The Melkor's Chosen are also absolutely not the sort of target that the Dalian cavalry wants to be going up against, although the Mithlon Marines might be able to get a nice volley off into them. Taking away the Dalian cavalry would also give Mordor a very big manoeuvrability advantage over on this flank. Again, those archers, that Thurney Tower, firing into those Mithlon Marines, and again, Nefi only sending one unit out here is probably a bit of a mistake. If I were him, actually, I'd probably cycle over and move my entire army closer to Dale, because you're putting pressure on the other flank, and you don't want to spread yourselves too thin. The Dalian cavalry is doing its best, but it really wants to stay away from the Melkor's Chosen and the spears. The Melkor's Chosen are going to take no prisoners here. No quarter given. The Mithlon Marines have been almost completely flattened at this point, and Nefi's position unmoving. Let's have a look over here, however, where the other Linden player is having a little bit more luck, as they just continue to slowly but surely bleed the dwarves out. Another unit of sentries of khazad-dum being hit by the Mithlon nobles. The chariots haven't really been doing what chariots traditionally do, which is charging, and they've just been using their ammunition, and as javelins that's going to be very effective against the dwarves, provided there's no answer to it. Over here, however, this is still a pretty scary position for Linden and Dale to lay siege to in the middle, because there's still a lot of high tier dwarven units like the Shield Guard. All of the Legion units are still here, and there are still Sons of the Fallen, in addition to the Mirkwood infantry unit, so it's definitely not the easiest position for Linden to take. They are going to need Dale to advance along this part of the battlefield as well if they're going to have any luck. Meanwhile, if we go back over to here, where the primary battle is taking place, the Melkor's Chosen are still largely intact. The Mithlon Marines have been horribly savaged at this point. If they were going to sort of engage piecemeal, they should have had at least one more unit of javelins over here so they could spread out a little bit, and then force the cavalry to choose their engagement. These Lake Town Spears are not going to be a match for the high tier Minas Morgul Chosen. Over here we can see another unit of Minas Morgul Chosen being committed over here, so the lower tier Lake Town units are not going to stand a chance. Again, piecemeal engagements like this are just going to favour Mordor on this flank as it stands, because it seems like they're just, you know, I would definitely have not sent over this unit of Lake Town Spearmen all on their lonesome. There's another unit back there, which Lake Town Spears are the sort of thing that can crumble pretty quickly under a high tier charge, something like the Melkor's Chosen. Nefi is now moving his army. Looks like he's moving backwards as well, which is going to further isolate him from his allies, which is dangerous. Moving into the trees might be useful for taking Mordor by surprise, but it's not going to matter if his allies get crushed. You can see actually that some Barding Herd and some Lake Town Pikes are being moved over here. All of the good work that MJG did on the other flank with Linden might go to waste if his allies don't support him in attacking the middle. And at this point Mordor has definitely had the better of this engagement over here. I mean, this Lake Town Spear unit, they are not in a good place at all. I mean, they're going to break any minute. This unit of spears is also coming in, trying to help out as Lyndon flee from the call of duty. These Lake Town spears are moving in, but again, they're not going to be a match for the Minas Morgul Chosen. I believe the Minas Morgul Chosen are multiple HP. And again, the Melkor's Chosen still harrying the lines. Where did the Temple Inquisitors go? That's what I want to know. Temple Inquisitors could potentially be a horrible unit to fight. Is this them back here? No, this is a unit of routing Moran on guard through the trees. As Nefi continues his retreat. There's some mounted Numenorian shield guard over there. Well, they are going to get some Barding Herd into the battle over here, Dale, which is not the worst thing for them. They will help against the Minas Morgul Chosen, but I think it's a little bit too late for them to claim victory over here. And DI, rightly, if Nefi's going to go up onto that hill, DI is just going to ignore him, and he's going to move in and crush Dale alongside his allies. And over here we can see the Orc Hunters of khazad-dum skirmishing with Dale, and they're moving forward with their 2nd Legion Axe Guard. Again, on their own. This battle has been a story of piecemeal engagement so far, but back here, you can see Lyndon are menacingly on this flank again, the sentries of khazad-dum horrendously isolated. And the chariots, they don't want to get too close to these pikes, because otherwise they'll fall away very, very quickly. Well, back here we can see the 4th Legion Shield Guard holding their ground. Lyndon's army as well. No one's too eager to begin the assault here on the middle, and that's because it's going to take a lot of men in order to break Mirkwood and khazad-dum's chokehold here in the middle. And in fact, they're feeling so confident that khazad-dum are actually leading an assault on Dale, possibly helping out Mordor as they squeeze in. And the 2nd Legion are a very, very good axe unit, and provided they aren't subject to the formation that the Barding Herd can take up, they should do quite a lot of damage. Although the Barding Herd should be able to get into formation, and this is a bit too narrow of an engagement for the Axe Guard. Either way, with the support of the Orc Hunters, there should be more damage, and the important thing is just that he's engaging them. Because at this point, Mordor is coming across, and Lyndon, I think they finally realise the peril that they're putting their allies in, because they are now advancing down off the hill again, and it looks like they are going to engage Mordor. Infantry to infantry. The Melkor's Chosen are just bullying the Dale infantry units that are over here. But it is an interesting fight so far, and there is a long way to go. Sauron's Will also moving in. Their AP damage is going to be very useful against Dale. And now the Mordor archers firing in against the approaching Lyndon forces. The Harlington infantry will be more difficult for Mordor to take on. And the heavy maulers, their AP isn't going to stand them in too good a stead against this more skillful Elven infantry units. But even so, I can't help but feel as though Lyndon maybe left their allies out in the cold for a little bit too long, and that might come back to haunt them. Over here there's more Harlington infantry coming in to try and help again, but there are Mirkwood infantry units over here as well. They might be spears, but they're still going to help out. Sauron's Will as well. The 3rd Legion, so the Dwarves of khazad-dum also moving out. I feel as though the blue team have certainly worked as a unit a little bit better than the red team as of now. The good work that Lyndon did in the early game, they now need to capitalise on that, because a lot of the units that were in the middle here have moved on to try and attack Lyndon and Dale on the other flank, and Lyndon need to start moving in, because otherwise, you know, leaving all of this in reserve, they're going to make the same mistake as Lyndon did on the other flank, I feel. Because there isn't actually all that much left here in the middle now. What's that over there? MJG going around the backside of Mordor with their lancers. Over here is where the primary engagement is, though, and it's a bit of a chaotic infantry fight to be sure. 3rd Legion is going to be able to wrap around the Harlington infantry, which may well bring this battle back into the blue team's favour, because the Harlington infantry was looking like it was going to tip the balance into the red team's favour. But the 3rd Legion don't go down without a fight, and the Harlington infantry are not AP, so they're going to struggle to kill the 3rd Legion quickly. With the support of all these Mordor units, well, Lyndon have got a lot of forces over here now. We shall see. Definitely the heavy maulers are not going to do too great against the Harlington infantry. The Thurney Tower are here, however. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if they still have ammunition, but it might not matter if the Lyndon archers get a hold of them. 4 Lyndon archers in the background over there. The pikemen are moving forward as well en masse to try and patch up the line. It's a real chaotic fight over here. But with the addition of Lyndon, whose sprites are actually Elder Enway when you get far enough away from them, which is interesting. But yeah, I think with the addition of Lyndon's attack, they might have saved things over here for the time being, but now...
Our ally lies dead.
Well, as soon as I was going to go and have a look at it, Mordor's general die at the hands of Dale's archers, but perhaps more worryingly for Mordor, they're about to lose their Temple Guard. Well, the Temple Guard are really good in melee as well, and actually that charge didn't kill any of them. But the fact that Lyndon are able to get into the back lines of Mordor at this point, that's a real worry for them. I mean, I would definitely try and keep cycle charging these Temple Guard. I mean, that's a good charge. Dealing with these Troll Drummers is also a good move, the Mithlond Lancers. A nice target for them to go after, particularly as the Temple Guard didn't seem to much care for the Lyndon Cavalry's charge. Definitely a very resilient unit. They're very expensive though as well. We shall see how things go. These cycle charges are going to continue backwards and forwards. Meanwhile, over here, as we go into the gorge, we can see that the dwarves and the elves move forward. And with the addition of the Hirti Orth, it looks like khazad-dum and Mirkwood are going to have victory, particularly as Dale has resorted to putting Bardian marksmen in on the front lines. They're decent in melee, to be fair, but against dedicated higher tier elven melee infantry, they're definitely not going to be sufficient, even with the support of these Dalian marksmen, I would think. Dale is sending more of his forces over here to the Chaos. Let's see how things are going over here. The 3rd Legion...
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
3rd Legion engaging the Javelins in melee, which is a very good use of their time. Even if they don't win this fight, even if they lose, distracting the Javelins is more than worth it, because Lyndon's Javelins can lay waste to entire sections of your army very, very quickly. As we look back over here, we can see the Thurn-E Tower are moving forward. They look like they're out of ammunition. Well, they've got their bows out still, but they do also have their swords out. How confusing. The fodder is moving forth. There are more 3rd Legion over here. I mean, it's complete chaos. The Hirti Lang are over here as well. Everything has been committed from everyone.
Our men have slain the enemy general. Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
Is that the Mordor general? Or is that the Lyndon general? Oh, the Noldorin Horse Lords over here? Mithlond Lancers. Well, there's Temple Inquisitors back here. There's not many of them, so I must have missed the legendary fights that they were a part of. I guess the general was in the Wardens of Harlingen, or the Mithlond Lancers. Interesting choice for your general, but it's more than worth it to trade these two. These two cavalry units have already done a lot of damage to Dwarven infantry. Trading them now for the Temple Guard is well worth it, because the Temple Guard is so lethal at range. Let's go back to the glorious chaos. We can see the Mithlond Marines are moving forward. They still have ammunition, I believe, which could well swing this fight in favour of the red team. Although the Harland infantry is now being crushed in on by the combination of all 3 of the blue team's armies. With the Hirti Orth over here, things are going to go pretty badly. I mean, this Lyndon army at this point is doing next to nothing. This infantry, it needs to be attacking into the centre, because the centre now doesn't have the infantry units to withstand a full assault from Lyndon. And he might be microing his cavalry, but that's no excuse really. I mean, at this point, the fact that all 3 of the blue team's army have deployed infantry over here to help Mordor, that's a green light for you to attack the centre.
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
Combination of the Thurn-E Tower and the 3rd Legion taking on the 4 Lyndon Marines, but now the more elite Lyndon infantry is moving forward, Nephi committing forward his general and his Mithlond Swordmasters. This other unit of Mithlond Marines firing their payload. Mithlond Swordmasters as well. The Mithlond Swordmasters could be a game changer. I'm not sure if the blue team have got anything over here which could go one-to-one to them. Certainly not the fodder. I mean, the Hirti Lang would actually be better than them, I think. But the Hirti Lang have also seen combat at this point, and they're going into melee with pikes, which is an interesting choice. We've got some Morannon archers here on the flank, dealing horrendous damage to the 4 Lyndon pikemen. These Morannon archers being accosted by these Mithlond Lancers. There are these Sauron's Will as well, which in a sustained fight would do quite well with cavalry. Dale are sending more of their infantry over here. So again, more and more resources from both teams are being siphoned into this big fight over here in the open plain. These Noldorin Guard are moving forward, which is a worrying sight for the blue team. Because again, this is another unit I think they'll struggle to deal with at this point, because they're completely fresh. Getting caught on some fodder. Victory is almost a certainty, yeah right. Mithlond Swordmasters. The day fodder beats Mithlond Swordmasters, that will be a dark day indeed. Hirti Lang. These pikes are out of formation actually, so they will be crushed underfoot pretty quickly. Although it does look like the Noldorin Guard are going to be able to get into support. Some shaken and tired Linden pikes. Having a look over here. I think those are routing units up in the distance. Indeed they are, heavy maulers. These Morannon archers. There are so few of these Mithlon lancers left, and there are also still a couple of Temple Inquisitors hounding them. And then there's the Wardens of Harlingen, but the Temple Guard are gone. That's a big loss for DI. That could well be costly in the late game, because the Temple Guard, if they're still alive with ammo in the late game, they can pretty much win you the game. We shall see if that comes back to bite him as Nephi moves forward with his Mithlon Marines to complete the encirclement on the 3rd E Tower and the 3rd Legion. But it's only Lake Town units from the front, which, well, it is a surround, and despite the fact that they aren't dedicated infantry, neither are the 3rd E Tower. And then we've got some Lake Town pikes trying to come in. The Dalian infantry has really tried to punch above its weight in this match, but they've really struggled against the vast majority of things they faced off against. But having said that, they have supported their Linden allies quite stoutly. Here the author here as well, doing a decent job against the Mithlon Swordmaster, although with the support of the pikes I would say this fight is going to go in favour of the red team. What is this over here? Oh, the Dwarves of khazad-dum committing heavily over here with 3 units of 4th Legion Shield Guard, which again could force this fight back in favour of the blue team. And I think the red team are actually running out of resources they can commit over here, because a lot of their forces are now tied up in the Linden player over here. The Wardens of Alos Tyrian have committed themselves forward. I would back the Linden player to take this central position at this point. The Noldorin Horse Lords with a charge forth as well into the Amon Lank. Yeah, Linden need to win this fight over here at this point, I feel like, because the blue team are winning everywhere else. I feel like they've waited too long, however, and that could cost them in the long run, because these Mirkwood archers will still inflict a heavy price on the Linden forces as they move forward. Actually, no, they won't. Starling is going to retreat and surrender the position to Linden. Interesting choice, considering the Noldorin Horse Lords are likely to be able to just sort of charge you as you retreat. And leaving these Iragwe Inanwaith out in the cold is also interesting, considering Thranduil is part of that unit. We'll see if that pays off. 4th Legion Shield Guard, again, completing the counter surround onto these Lake Town pikemen. And these low tier Lake Town units are not likely to last too long. Having said that, Lake Town River Patrol is still alive, despite nearly falling foul of the Mordor infantry early on. They're going to be able to do a lot of damage, and actually it looks like, based on that projectile, yes indeed, the Blackshot Dragon Slayers are shooting into them as well. So again, I'm still not sure how this fight is going to go over here, although I would still, I don't know, the red team might actually have this. I mean, the addition of that 4th Legion I thought was going to be the game changer, but there are still enough in terms of Linden melee infantry, I think, that they can pull this out. The ranged support from the blue team is not as severe as it is for the red team. And over here, this blob of Linden elites, I mean, the Mithlon Swordmasters are getting horribly cut down by what's left of the Mordor skirmish line, but the Noldorin Guard are standing pretty firm. And this Thurny Tower over here could well find themselves in melee with a unit they are ill-equipped to deal with. We shall see. I mean, it is still pretty close. I mean, looking at the percentages of kills, I mean, the blue team are pretty far behind. They are 10% behind. But, having said that, they do still have a lot of these elite Mirkwood units. And also they have the Arthalion Inanwaith, which, as far as a melee powerhouse, nothing is going to be a match for them. The Mithlon Swordmasters are not going to be sufficient to deal with them. Having said that, Thranduil has been caught out. Yeah, I think with Linden's attack over here, it has sort of put the final nail in the coffin. There is still around 10,000 frames left to play, however. So I might be wrong. And there goes the Dale General. That's a start. A lot of Dale's units are low tiers. That might convince them to rout. These here Elang, defeat seems certain. I wonder why. Up against Harlingen infantry, a unit I would back them to beat most of the time. For Linden Marines, those javelins could be, well, I suppose it's the Harlingen Guard shooting in. There's a lot of these Mirkwood skirmishers still left alive, however. And Mirkwood skirmishers are a scary thing indeed. Let's move back over to here, shall we? These Dalian marksmen moving forwards. Lake Town River Patrol still firing in. Again, the dwarves are really in a bit of a tricky situation here, as they have been all throughout the match, to be fair, with these javelins just mercilessly targeting down the heavily armoured dwarven troops. The Sons of the Fallen are over here, but they are being focused down. It does look like over here, Linden Well, there are a lot of 4th Legion over here. This fight is still a little bit up in the air, but on the 2 flanks, it seems like the red team are going to be victorious. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers, mercifully for the blue team, are now out of ammunition, but the pain is only just beginning because they are also a very, very accomplished melee fighting unit as well. This unit of Lake Town Pikes is routing, so killing the general does seem to have had an effect on the Dalian troops at the very least. As these Mythlon Marines, looks like do they have ammunition? Nope, they have pulled out their blades. There's not a lot of Mordor's army left. DI has been ravaged a little bit. And now these Noldorin Guard, looks like they're eager to finish off these Morannon archers, even if they're out of ammunition. Just trying to sort of carve down the enemy army at this point is going to be more than worth it. These Therny Tower are actually victorious on this flank, but I don't think they're going to be able to take too much advantage of it because it is only them. What was that roar all about?
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
Well, quite. The Noldorin Guard moving forwards. They're going to be able to catch the Morannon archers in melee. And combined with the ranged fire they're taking, that's going to take them out of action pretty darn quickly. These Mythlon Swordmasters, victory seems certain, amazingly enough. I can't imagine why that is, because they're facing off against a hugely superior force numerically. So they're probably going to lose that fight, but more worryingly, over this side, the red team definitely has the numbers advantage now. Lake Town River Patrol being committed to melee, now they're out of ammunition. The Sons of the Fallen, well, victory seems certain for them. They are a stout force, but with the Dragon Slayers there, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Oh dear. Mythlon Marines, they are out of ammunition, but they are going to be much better than the River Patrol in melee. Let's go back to the middle and see how Mirkwood are doing. The Nanwaith have actually managed to turn the fight around, despite being horribly outnumbered. I mean, the Shield Guard have been helping them, but the Mythlon Swordmasters unable to finish them off. Although with the Javelins, I think Thranduil's days are numbered. Although the Javelins are going for the Shield Guard. Well, Thranduil died anyway.
That's our chances of victory with it.
But the Shield Guard are not as much of a threat to you as this sort of high-tier Nanwaith unit, to be honest.
Our ally lies dead.
There goes the Dwarven General. This may be the end for the blue team. The Amon Lanka moving forward, taking a javelin volley to the face. Not great for them. These Hiri Peng, Mirkwood are just so horribly outnumbered now. The skirmish advantage going to Linden, I would say, although these Harlinden Guard taking a full frontal volley from the Hiri Peng. But again, the presence of the Noldorin Blade Masters certainly hasn't made things easily. That's almost certainly what brought about the end of the Elder Palace Guard. The assistance of this very, very powerful unit. 2 Elven Titans when it comes to dealing damage with the Noldorin Blade Masters. There aren't many of them left, but they should still be able to pull out a victory against the Hiri Peng. The Amon Lank chasing the Linden Javelins. I mean, at this point they don't have too much of a choice. Fair, the Nanwaith victorious against the Swordmasters.
For defeat seems almost certain.
Well, they've pulled it back in terms of the percentages, to be fair. Now less than 10. 4 Linden Marines. I mean, the Amon Lank would beat them in sustained fighting, but the Javelins, this is what you really want to be doing with Javelins. Because they can only target one of them, and the one that they don't target is going to be able to release their payload in the Harlinden Guard. Mirkwood are doing, they're doing a pretty decent job over here, though, of just trying to make this work. I mean, Linden are not going to have all that much left after when all is said and done, but I think over here the red team's advantage is simply too great. Nephi and Tidasium combining their forces to really force the enemy off at this point. And that's going to be it for the blue team's presence over here, actually. No, it isn't, actually. The Morannon archers are still alive. There are not many of them. What are they going for? Going for some Mythlon Swordmasters. I mean, at this point, just killing whatever they can is pretty much the only option left open to them. Troll Drummers are still waddling around the battlefield. What is going on over here? Well, there are some Axe Guard as well. But they're fighting pikes head-on, which is not really the most cost-effective use of their time. But it doesn't really matter too much anyway. Dale is going to advance and bring about their destruction. What is going on over here? It looks actually like, well, what can Mirkwood do? Well, these Amon Lank have managed to sort of get into a sustained fight with these 4 Linden Marines. Victory seems certain for both units, interestingly enough. The Nunwaith are here as well, though, so if they get activated, which indeed they are, the Forlinden Marines should probably crumble. They're already shaken. And indeed, the Harlinden Guard are going to be accosted in melee by the Nunwaith. More Forlinden Marines. Merc would have done a good job at dealing with the Linden force, which was always going to have the edge in terms of attacking them here. DI sending over his Morannon Archers and his Troll Drummers, so there is going to be a last stand over here. Because there are 6,000 frames still to go. Noldorin Blade Masters, victorious, but they are taking arrow fire from the Delupeng Emin. I'm not even going to attempt to say this name, I'm just going to call them the Delupeng. 3 Noldorin Blade Masters remaining. Morannon Archers, but I think, you know, the other Linden army simply has too much left, and Dale still have their Dragon Slayers, which they can use to good effect in melee. The Eye still has those pesky Morannon Archers in the back, though. Merc would need to be able to use their skirmishers here for sure. Harlinden Guard firing point blank into the Nunwaith, which is working for them. These Morannon Archers are shaken and tired. What's going on back here? Noldorin Guard looks like they're just going to circumvent the Troll Drummers entirely. The 4 Linden Archers are just going to be sacrificed to the Trolls. But yeah, something like this Noldorin Guard is going to be too difficult, I think, for Mirkwood to deal with at this point. Mirkwood have... Their strength at this point lies in the fact they still have some archers that have ammo left, and the Noldorin Guard are going to be relatively good at absorbing that pressure. And there are still a lot of Dalian units left to commit as well. The Amon Lank, fighting hard, going to be victorious over there as well. The Nunwaith still pursuing that Harlinden Guard. Morannon Archers over here. Noldorin Blade Masters have fallen. It's definitely an interesting sort of situation they're in. I can't see Mirkwood digging their way out of this, to be honest. But with all of these archers, I mean, the Delupeng, maybe? I mean, they're having to fire into the Noldorin Guard. They're actually doing a decent amount of damage as well. Mirkwood skirmishers are very accurate and they are very damaging. So even a unit that is going to be able to resist them relatively well is still going to take damage. It's whether they have enough ammunition to really deal with the slew of units that's going to be coming towards them, and especially if something like that Athala range unit still has ammunition, Mirkwood are doomed. Really though, having to go directly into the meat grinder, these 3 Nunwaith are going to be sort of sacrificed, hold them at bay. What is going on over here? The Harlinden Guard, they're wavering. Those Morannon Archers coming to the aid. I mean, they're not going to be too great in melee, but it's something at this point. The blue team are just going to be grateful for the numbers. The Delupeng have been accosted in melee. I'm wondering if they're out of ammo, actually, because they pulled their swords out. Did a decent amount of damage to the Noldorin Guard, though. It's going to be last stand time. Those Troll Drummers, could they yet be the heroes? Really only the Dragon Slayers are probably going to have the stopping power to take them down easily. The Morannon Archers are wavering. Damn Orcs. No guts for the fight. These Delupeng actually still have some ammunition. Dealing with some Sword Masters might be a useful application of those arrows. Depending on how many they have left, of course. Or is it just the one? These Amon Lank were victorious and now going to come back over here, and those axes are pretty lethal in melee. I'd be very impressed if Mirkwood can pull this out. The balance of power is horribly against them. There's only 3% of the blue team remaining. But they have pulled it back within 10%, so it is very, very close indeed. These Morannon Archers are wavering. But with the support of their elves, I mean, just the fact that they're getting in a surround here means they're going to be able to efficiently deal with this force that Nafi sent forward, perhaps a little too hastily. Victory seems certain. This is where Linden's general is as well. He's getting knocked around pretty harshly by the Mirkwood and Mordor forces. Do the dwarves have anything left? I don't believe they do. The Harlinden Guard, they still have ammunition. The damage they might be able to do over a long period of time might well be quite telling. These Delupeng trying to get into position. And the Troll Drummers. What's going on back here? These Morannon Archers still have ammunition. Trying to do their best against the Athala Rangers, which do still have ammo. Definitely a worthwhile distraction. I mean, I think this is just going to be the honourable last stand of the blue team still. I think the red team still have just too much. These troll drummers holding up this force, being sacrificed, and then the Delupeng are able to get some nice hits on them as they get caught. There goes Nefi's general. And this is tense. I still think the red team have just about got this. I don't think that the blue team have got enough in terms of melee to genuinely put up too much of a fight, and I think when the Athala Rangers are done being distracted by the other unit of Mordor Morannon Archers, of which there are basically none left at this point, the Athala Rangers are still going to have ammo. That's probably going to be the thing which finally puts the Mirkwood Elves in the ground. Man, these Dalian marksmen are already wavering. A rear charge from the Amon Lank is going to send them routing. Yeah, they are. They're routing already. Lake Town River Patrol still have ammunition as well, though. But they are being accosted in melee by the Nunwaith, and the River Patrol are garbage in melee. So even a unit of 3 Nunwaith is going to be enough to deal with them. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers are the real powerhouses in melee at this point. Just depends on whether or not the Delupeng, I should say, still have ammunition, which this unit might. The Harlingen Guard are still over here. They're still reloading. But as long as they're firing their arrows into Morannon Archers, that's fine. Interesting, so one of the armies is fully gone at this point, of which I can only assume that is Nefi's army, so he is now fully destroyed. Tydasium, however, I think these Dragon Slayers are going to be too much in melee for them to deal with. They have Javelin support as well, and also when those Athala Rangers come over here, that's going to be body piercing, which is going to be lethal against Mirkwood. And the Delupeng is really all they have left at this point. The Amon Lank are good, but they're not going to be good enough to deal with the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. The Morannon Archers are threatening to rout. Amusingly, these Dalian marksmen are over here fighting to the death, getting into these Lake Town River Patrol. There's another unit of River Patrol there as well, so it looks like Tydasium is going to be able to pull this out for the red team. And the Harlingen Guard from Lost MJG still has ammunition, so yeah, this is going to be the last stand, but a very, very good fight that Mirkwood put up here in the middle, because it is going to be within at least 4%, possibly 3% of one another. Yeah, the Delupeng. Again, if that Temple Guard maybe had been saved, if it didn't get charged, that could have been a real deciding factor, because the Temple Guard are every bit equal of the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. In melee, they're better. That would have perhaps been the thing. I mean, the Dwarves also took some pretty hefty losses early on, which was really unfortunate for them. So if either one of those two things had gone the other way, I feel like the blue team would have taken this. But as it is, we don't deal in what-ifs. And here come the Athala Rangers, which are going to very, very quickly bring about the end of the Delupeng. There's still 1,000 frames left, so they're going to fight bravely to the very end. Don't think there's any Nunwaith left. There's still some Amon Lank. That River Patrol. Previously known as the Rivermen, of course. Been given a Lake Town style unit model, which I do like. There's the Harlingen Guard. The Morannon Archers must have routed off or just been straight up killed. And now the Dalian marksmen are running for the hills, despite the fact that victory is at hand. But yeah, interesting play. It was definitely a very nervy fight at the beginning, and it very quickly devolved into who would get the better of that fight on the right-hand side of the map. And it was the red team, despite the fact that Nefi, I think, maybe retreated a little bit too readily against Mordor. It looked like he was going to leave his allies for dead, but to his credit, he did come back on players admitted defeat, and it is just going to be the Delupeng at this point. Not going to go down too easily, though. Oh, there's one Nunwaith up there. Let's witness his last stand. Well, it wasn't a very long last stand. Unceremoniously skewered by a javelin. Right, let's up the speed just a little bit. And there we go. Yeah, within 4%. Very close. Could have gone either way. Mistakes, I think, on both sides, but again, that's understandable. I mean, no one plays perfectly. But it is, you know, I have to point them out. It's what I do. But looking at these, obviously Starling did incredibly well. He got the most amount of kills on both teams. And I don't think that's too surprising considering the fact he had a lot of skirmishes and he was going up against, quite a lot. He was able to spread himself all over the field and help both of his allies. The Dwarves, based on the fact that it is obviously the first battle that he's played in quite a while, because I do recognise the name. Obviously it was a little bit. He did get unfortunately attacked early on by Lyndon, and he tried to retreat, and I don't think he retreated in the right way. He obviously got punished very heavily by Lyndon for that, and that was really where Lost MJG came in. He may have got the lowest amount of kills, but the amount of kills he got on those Dwarves early on really always put the blue team on the back foot in a way. Mordor, DI, I think losing those Temple Guard was pretty key. I mean, early on his cavalry was doing horrendous damage to Dale, but in the end the red team were able to pull that around. Neffy doing very well, Dale managing to sort of see the match through. Having a look at the amount of kills that Starling got, so we get the full penalty. That Delupang, 459 kills, that's an enormous amount of kills. Very impressive indeed. A lot of ammunition that they carry as well. They might be a ranger unit, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell when it's all in Elvish. The Nanwaith getting a decent amount of kills. Again, very few units getting under 100 kills. Interestingly enough, the Elder Palace Guard, the Arthalion E Nanwaith, which I think is the Elder Palace Guard, I can only assume it is, only got 48 kills because they were engaged in melee by the Noldorin Blade Masters who had support, whereas the Nanwaith were all alone. Here E Orth doing relatively well. The Here E Lung, to the support of his allies, this unit of Thrandim only getting 1 kill. That's rather unfortunate. But again, over in the Chaos on the right hand side, it's hard to really make the most of some of your infantry units, particularly if the enemy is well coordinated. The blue team worked well in tandem early on, but when the red team got their ducks in a row, unfortunately for them, the losses they took early on was something that the blue team never truly recovered from, I don't think. But yeah, very good game either way. Very good fight back from the blue team at the end, even if they weren't able to quite complete it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.